Hey YouTube, this is PokéCastXVll here, and today we're going to be looking at my personal top 10 cards from the new Sun and Moon set, which has just been released. If you'd like to check out some of the content of what's inside the set, you can simply click here to check out my booster box opening, or alternatively, you can click the annotations at the end of the video. It's important to note that this is by playability and not by the artwork on the cards, so if you are a competitive player, you can get a general feel as to how the new cards will impact the current metagame. Keep in mind there are a few reprinted cards already in rotation, so I won't be including those either. One final thing to mention before we get started is that this video will feature on the ProPokemon website, and if you would like to check them out, feel free to do so at www.propokemon.com. I will also leave a link in the description box below as well. And with all that said, let's begin. Number 10. At number 10 we have Oranguru. Oranguru is a colourless basic type Pokemon that stands at 120 HP with a single attack and an interesting ability. Instruct allows you to draw until you have 3 cards in your hand, not forgetting that this ability does stack, meaning that if you have more than one, you can use one Oranguru, play some more resources to lower your hand, and then activate another Oranguru, drawing more cards. Its attack Psychic deals a solid 60 damage, and then 20 more times the amount of energy attached to the defending Pokemon. This immediately refers to having a counter to cards like Yveltal-EX and Lugia-EX, since they both rely on stacking energy to deal more damage. The reason, however, that Oranguru is so far down the list is because at the moment, there are just a lot more better options of drawing cards like Shaymin-EX and Octillery, to name a few. With setup netting until you have 6 cards in your hand, and then supporters like Sycamore allowing you to draw until you have 7 in the current format, while not impossible, getting down to less than 3 cards is going to be quite rare, so I don't feel at this present moment in time, players will really utilise Oranguru to its fullest potential. As a basic, it can help against late game ends, especially when you're only down to 1 or 2 cards, but even then, it's questionable as to whether it would justify a spot within the deck. On top of that, Oranguru does need a max elixir and a double colourless energy to be able to strike in one turn, which isn't by any means difficult, but it does require a lot of resources when there are much better options in the format. And finally, a 2 retreat cost isn't ideal, as you don't want it to be sitting on the bench and then to be Lysander stalled. It's a card that I do like a lot, but at the moment I think is too slow for the current format. However, be sure to see more Oranguru lurking around once we eventually go into the Sun and Moon onwards rotation, and the format does slow down a little. Number 9. At number 9 we have Lunala-GX. This is the first GX of the new archetype in our top 10 list. Lunala stands at a pretty beefy 250 HP, is a stage 2 GX with just one attack including its own GX, which you can only use once during the game. Moongeist Beam deals a solid 120 damage, and its GX attack allows you to KO a basic Pokemon that isn't a GX, which is great against EX based decks while they're still around in the format. However, it's Lunala's ability Psychic Transfer, which allows you to move Psychic Energy from one of your Pokemon to another as often as you like during your turn before you attack. That's the main focus of this card. In the past, we've seen similar cards with this ability, such as Klinklang from the Black and White sets, Aromatisse from the X and Y, and more recently, Golduck Break from Breakpoint. These decks utilise the Max Potion trick quite well, as you're able to move all the energy from a Pokemon, use Max Potion to heal off all the damage, and then put all the energy back on where they started to prevent you discarding the energy in the first place. This also isn't restricted to using Rainbow Energy, which compensates all energy types, meaning you can transfer it around your bench and your active as if it was a Psychic Energy, but use it for other energy types. With Lunala, being a stage 2 means that you have to go through the stages or go down the rare candy route if you want to get it out, which questions whether the concept is fast enough for the current metagame. That and Psychic isn't really too prominent within the format, it's a case of finding other partners who can utilise Lunala or waiting for future releases where it could potentially see more play. Overall, I do like the card and I expected to see it feature in some form or another. Number 8. Coming in at number 8 we have DECIDUEYE-GX. This card was quite hyped coming into Sun and Moon. Standing at a pretty hefty 240 HP, Decidueye is a stage 2 with an interesting ability in Feather Arrow, which allows you to put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon once per turn before you attack. In the past, we've seen similar strategies utilising De-Evolution Spray, where you would evolve a Pokemon, use its ability, and then use De-Evolution Spray to take the Pokemon back off and put it onto another bench Pokemon to use the effect again. Following that, it then has a Razor Leaf attack for a Grass and 2 colourless, dealing a respectable 90 damage, and a very interesting GX attack for 1 Grass, which allows you to put 3 cards from your discard pile into your hand. This does kind of remind me of Sableye from Dark Explorers with this Junk Hunt attack, which makes me wonder if we could see Decidueye in a lot of Disruption decks. However, what Decidueye does have going for it is that unlike other stage 2s, it can benefit from Forest of Giant Plants, getting Decidueye out in a single turn. Even with that, Decidueye doesn't strike me as a Pokemon that can stand on its own, and certainly does need a suitable partner to go with him. However, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if we do see Decidueye doing well in a couple of tournaments later down the line. Number 7. And at number 7 we have Lily. Lily is very interesting in that it almost has a reprinted effect to Bianca from Black and White, although with the added effect that if you're going first, you draw until you have 8 instead. This going first can be extremely good as you can limit your hand size down to as little as possible and then net an excessive up to 8 cards. While this is very powerful, Lily also states that it has to be on that player's first turn, which does slightly hinder it a bit. Unlike one-off techs like Olympia, Team Flare, Grunt and Delinquent to name a few, drawing into Lily later game doesn't really allow you to use the card to its fullest potential, and having just the one copy in my opinion doesn't warrant putting it into your deck as the probability of starting with it is extremely slim. If we do see some kind of LURANTIE-GX back in the format where you can start a guidance for the cards, or if the format does eventually get a bit slower, then I can certainly see Lily featuring a bit more, but until then, there are much better supporters that you can play such as Professor Sycamore and N, which is why Lily only comes in at number 7. Number 6. Moving on to number 6, we have Professor Kukui. Professor Kukui enables you to draw 2 cards with the added effect that your Pokemon now deal 20 more damage this turn when attacking. If you've been around the game long enough, you probably would have noticed the immediate comparison with Giovanni's scheme, which did see a lot of play as a tech card in the last format. The two share very similar effects, and it's very debatable as to which is the better of the two in this current format. However, I can certainly see this card being used as a tech, as you can easily discard it with something like Professor Sycamore or Ultra Ball, and later revive it with VS Seeker when you're needing that little bit more damage. Again, a card I do like a lot, and one now that with Muscle Ban out of the formats and evolution starting to become a thing again, I'm sure will find its way into the format in some form or another. Number 5. Up at number 5, we have Rotom Dex. This is a card that I'm a big fan of in the set. At present, we don't have any way of manipulating our prizes, however in the past, we've had options such as Alpha Lithograph from Heart Gold Soul Silver, Rotom from Undaunted with Mischievous Trick, and more recently Town Map. When playing a game of Pokemon, your first search card, which allows you to go into your deck, enables you to try and work out what's prized. This is extremely important when you're playing cards that are crucial to your deck, but if they're prized, there isn't really much way of getting them out unless of course you begin to start taking prizes. If you are able to suss what's missing in the deck, and you do find there's something missing that's crucial to your setup, you can use Rotom Dex, which allows you to shuffle your prizes into your deck, and then take the top however many cards you had in your prizes and relay them in your prizes section. When you consider that you could be a turn or 2 into the game, or even potentially more once you play Rotom Dex, you could have already played most of your important resources within the deck to then put in cards that are less significant back into your prizes. There is a very small percentage, however, depending on how many cards that you're shuffling back into your deck, that you could re-put a prize that you initially had in your prizes back into your prizes again. However, the chances of this happening are quite slim. Remembering that Rotom Dex is an item card, which means that you won't be able to revive it with VS Seeker. It's a card that again I do really like a lot in the set, and one that I'm sure we'll start seeing play no doubt. Number 4. At number 4 we have SKARMORY. At 110 HP, 1 retreat cost and a mediocre second attack in Aerial Ace, SKARMORY on the surface doesn't look like that it has much going for it. However, on further inspection, SKARMORY's first attack in Metallic Sound for a single double colourless energy deals no damage, but states that you discard all special energy from each Pokemon in play. This is an extremely powerful effect to have in your arsenal, especially as a one-off tech, as SKARMORY is splashable due to its colourless attack. SKARMORY is the perfect opportunity to capitalise on your opponents when overcommitting to using too many special energy. Not forgetting that Rainbow Energy has also just been reprinted within the set, and of course Splash Energy is starting to see more play. One thing to be cautious about though is that the card text does read that it's all special energy, not specifically stating that it's your opponent, so if you do have a double colourless energy on SKARMORY, then you have to discard that energy also, which leaves you with a Pokemon stuck in the active with just a single retreat cost, if it's your only energy on SKARMORY. This isn't too difficult to tackle, but nonetheless it is a problem that you can do without. It is a basic Pokemon, so you can utilise Max Elixir if you choose to. As a basic Pokemon that only gives out a single prize, SKARMORY certainly deserves its spot on our top 10 list at 4th place. Number 3. At number 3 we have Alolan Muck. Not used for its attack, Power of Alchemy prevents all abilities from basic Pokemon in play, in the discard pile and within the hand. Again, most players who have been around for a while will probably see the comparisons with Garbodor printed in both black and white and X and Y, as well as Wobbuffet, who did a very similar thing in Phantom Forces and later reprinted in Generations, and of course Silent Lab, which was a stadium back in Primal Clash. What Muk does have going for it over Garbodor is that it doesn't require a tool to use the effect. However, with an extremely hefty retreat cost, it's very difficult to see Muk being played without something like a Floatstone. When you consider the amount of basic Pokemon within the format that have abilities such as Shaman EX and Hooper EX to name a few, Muk is great at being able to shut them down and preventing your opponent from setting up, as well as disrupting big attackers like Giratina EX and Volcanion EX, which are played a fair bit in the format at present. At the moment though, Muk in my opinion is just an inferior Garbodor, as Garbodor allows you to go that one step further and prevent all abilities, not just basic Pokemon. Even players who choose not to run a Garbodor line may just play a single copy of Hexmaniac instead, as it's a lot easier to fit into the deck than a stage 1 evolution line. Although once Garbodor is rotated, I fully expect Muk to take center stage and become quite prominent within the format, so I have no doubt how impactful this card will eventually be, but nonetheless finishes at 3rd place in our top 10 list. Number 2. Coming in at 2nd place, we have LURANTIE-GX. Lurantis is a stage 2 Pokemon with a decent 210 HP and 2 attacks, as well as its GX attack. For a single grass, Flower Supply does 40 damage and allows you to attach 2 energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way that you like. This is extremely good, as using Lurantis as a form of energy acceleration can allow you to attach up to 3 energy onto your Pokemon, not also limiting it to being just grass type energy. With Battle Compressor recently rotated, your best bet of getting energy into the discard pile is through cards like Ultra Ball and Professor Sycamore, to name a few. Once powered up, you then have the option of Solar Blade, which deals a solid 120 damage, two-shotting most things within the format, as well as healing 30 damage in the process. Finally, we have its GX attack in Chloroscythe, which deals 50 damage times the number of grass energy attached to Lurantis, creating an unlimited amount of damage Lurantis can hit for. Much like Decidueye-GX, Lurantis can also utilize Forest of Giant Plants, so you could potentially be attacking with Lurantis on turn 1 if you're able to hit all the pieces of the puzzle. Lurantis provides not only a great form of energy acceleration, but is also a really solid attacker and is a card that I fully expect to start making an appearance at upcoming tournaments. Number 1. And finally, the big number 1, and at 1st place we have Umbreon GX. I did initially overlook Umbreon to begin with, however, upon reconsidering it, I realised how amazing this card is. At a respectable 200 HP with 3 attacks, Umbreon is more or less the missing link that Yveltal's been missing ever since his partner in crime in Darkrai EX left the format. Its first attack straight for a single Darkness Energy deals 30 damage and gives you the option of switching Umbreon with a Pokemon on the bench, immediately taking away Lysander and Stall threats. This attack is very similar to the Donphan Wall deck that featured a few seasons back, where you had things like Sigilyph, Wobbuffet and Robo Substitute, to name a few. Moving on, its second attack is what all the fuss is about. Shadow Bullet for a single Dark Energy and a double Colorless Energy deals 90 damage and 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is an exact reprint of Night Spear taken from Darkrai EX in Dark Explorers, however even better, as you only need the single Darkness Energy and then a double Colorless Energy on top. This can be powered up in 2 turns, and if you have an EV on the bench, you can utilise Max Elixir before then evolving to Umbreon and attaching a DCE all in a single turn. Keep in mind that Max Elixir is only for basic Pokemon, hence why you wouldn't be able to use it with Umbreon GX. Alternatively, you can also use Eevee's ability, Energy Evolution, to attach a Darkness Energy from your hand and get out Umbreon that way if you choose to do so. And finally is GX attack, Dark Cool, for a Dark and a Colourless discards 2 energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is great when you consider that most Yveltal decks do generally run Enhanced Hammer and Team Flare Grunt, so it does allow you to be extremely disruptive and disrupt your opponent's rhythm when they're trying to conjure up something to attack with. What I will say for Umbreon is that while you can soften up other Pokemon on the bench, creating easier KOs later game, only dealing 90 damage with not much else to bump up the attack can often lead to potentially 3-shotting big EXs. Darkrai EX was released in the second set introducing EXs, which made the format a lot more intricate, as at the time, most EXs were KO'd in about 2 turns or so. With the pace of the format as it currently is, and having so many different techs and options to choose from, I think Shadow Bullet is a fantastic attack, but I don't think it'll reach the heights of what Night Spear did, especially with Dark Claw and Muscle Band both rotated from the format. Nonetheless, while Umbreon isn't what I believe to be the best card in this set, it's the one that I feel will have the most impact in the current metagame, which is why it's taken our number 1 spot. And so there you have it, that was my top 10 cards for the new Sun and Moon set. Some honourable mentions before we finish up include Team Skullgrunt, which I particularly quite like, Solgaleo GX, Shiinotic and the 2 bulls in Timer and Nestball. But otherwise, again, if you'd like to check out more of the Sun and Moon content from the set, feel free to check out my booster box opening with the annotations at the end of this video, and of course check out ProPokemon.com if you'd like to see more articles to help you further your game. All the links will be in the description box below. If you do feel that any cards were missed out, feel free to stick a comment in the comment section below, or alternatively you can stick a comment there if you disagree with the order. But otherwise, it leaves me to say thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.